Welcome to Montgomery Memories. I'm Tracy Henao.
And I'm Kevin Chesar. Today's episode spotlights the Montgomery Historic Preservation Association, MHPA, and the story of one of our most beloved landmarks, the Swaim House.
That's right, Kevin. And before we dive into talking about the house, let's just set the scene about what Montgomery was like during the early 1830s. It was a much smaller town than today. So as you remember in past episodes, we were a population of around 500 up until after World War II. So when we're talking about the early 1830s, it's more of a rural farming landscape and fields and woodlots more than streets. And just a few key roads were connecting the neighbors and churches and towns.
Right. And I think it's important just to imagine dirt or gravel roads, wagons, horses, and the people who measured how long it takes to get there. Actually, I still do that now, not rather than miles, which a lot of people do today. Life moved to the rhythm of daylight, weather, and seasons, and that rhythm is written into the houses like the Swaim.
Excellent. So today I'm really excited. We have a very special guest with us today, joining us on the podcast. And if you know anything about Montgomery history, then you've heard of and probably you've spoken with Janet. So Janet Korach is the former Montgomery council member, a historian, and a longtime MHPA leader. So thank you so much for joining us, Janet.
Thanks for having me.
Janet, we've heard a little bit about Montgomery Historic Preservation Association on our last episode, and how it was formed after the demolition of the Presbyterian manse. Can you just tell us a little bit more about MHPA?
Sure. The proposed demolition of the manse outraged residents in Montgomery. A group of concerned citizens came together to do whatever they could to save the manse, but that didn't happen. The manse was demolished. And one of the positive parts of that was that the Montgomery Historical Society was established. In the 1990s, after many years of successes and failures, the members of the society had grown tired and aged. In 1995, Montgomery celebrated the bicentennial with 2 years of activities, leading to a renewed interest in preservation and the formation of the Montgomery Historical Preservation Association to care for, interpret, and share Montgomery's history. And preservation isn't just about wood and old bricks. It's about keeping the community memory alive through telling the stories and giving people the opportunity to walk through an old historic house and better understand who lived there, how they worked, and how the community grew the way it did.
Janet, so as many organizations have, I know that MHPA membership began to dwindle and the organization made the difficult decision to dissolve. But we here at the city were so grateful that MHPA did turn over all of the assets in the Swaim House to the city so we can continue to educate residents about our history and share the stories. MHPA did so many great things over the years for the community, but do you have any projects that are particularly special to you?
One of my favorite projects was the brochure that explains the story of the Swaim House, who lived there, the structure of the house, the changes that occurred from railroad tracks to golf course around the house. And we installed then a mailbox outside the house where the brochure is available for anybody who just stops by, is driving down Cooper Road and wonders about the house. You can stop, get in the parking lot, and pull out the brochure. And the brochure will tell you everything you ever thought you wanted to know about the Swaim House. The other project would be the city calendar from 2018, where art students produced works based on photos of places Montgomery had lost over the years, from the manse to Chester's Roadhouse. We published the photo each month on our Facebook page, and people were able to reminisce about their lives in Montgomery.
Thank you, Janet. And we also want to thank all the members of MHPA over the years, including some of the first officers, Dottie Mayersky, Tom Eberhard, Mary O'Driscoll, Claire Holthouse, and directors Martha Seaman and Michael DePriest. And of course, we have to thank Gary Bloomberg and Kay Gaffney, who I think you worked a lot with, Janet, and keeping MHPA running for so many years. Is there anyone else that has made a big impact on MHPA that you would like to make sure we recognize?
There's nobody more important than Juanita Conklin to Montgomery's preservation. It's tempting to believe that the house has always looked the way it does now, but when the city acquired it, people lived there.
Mhm.
And there was wallpaper on the walls and stuff that people used to live there. Juanita organized the effort to restore the building and furnish it then with antiques appropriate to the time. And when you go in there now, you feel as though it had stopped in time. But the fact is, people have come and gone, and without Juanita's efforts, it definitely wouldn't look that way.
That's one of my favorite things about the house is remembering that people were living there and doing laundry and carrying things up and down those stairs.
Mhm.
If you've ever been in the house, you know that was quite a feat doing that. So let's talk a little bit more about the house, which MHPA called home for so long. Most of our listeners probably know the house sits at the corner of Cooper and Zigzag Road in Swaim Park. The oldest portion of the house dates to around 1832 when James and Susan Wilder built the house for themselves. And there are six children living in that house after relocating from Rhode Island. The house was later added on to in 1840 with a rock basement under this portion.
That's right, Tracy. And the house is a 2-story farmhouse in the federal style with 2 fireplaces. And 2 families gave it its name. The Wilders were the first occupants, and the Swaims purchased the house and the surrounding land in 1917.
1832 was a period when many families were just establishing farms. They were expanding their crops in Montgomery and connecting to regional markets. This house wasn't just a home, and I know we've talked about the family that's lived there a little bit. It was a working farm hub, a place where food was produced, stored, preserved, and shared.
And when you walk through the house, you can feel how practical it was. Fireplaces weren't just cozy features. They were essential. They cooked food, heated rooms, dried clothing, and helped the family get through the rough winters. People sometimes forget how much of life happened at home. Clothing was mended and often made by hand. Food was preserved and stored because you couldn't just run to the store anytime you needed something. And children had responsibilities early, helping with gardens, carrying water, gathering eggs, or doing chores before schooling was as formal as it is today.
That brings up something that I love about the Wilder Swaim House, and that it just helps us to remember that early Montgomery was comprised of a small number of families, many of whom were farmers. They worked from sunup to sundown, planned around the seasons, and depended on their neighbors. Janet, can you tell us a little bit more about what farm life would have looked like around the time the house was built?
Sure. Farm life was seasonal and constant. Spring meant preparing fields, planting, repairing fences, getting ready for the work ahead. Summer brought long days, weeding, tending animals, cutting hay. Food was harvest and preservation time, which we actually acknowledge now by having the Harvest Moon Festival in the park.
Mm-hmm.
Putting food away for the winter, storing the root vegetables, repairing tools, mending clothes, chopping woods, getting tired of the list, and keeping—
I'm tired just thinking about it.
keeping everyone warm and fed. We have on display tools that were used for making shoes.
Mm-hmm.
You don't really think about it, sewing up a tear in your clothing. Okay, yeah, we still do that.
Right.
But we certainly don't make our own shoes anymore. There's a spinning wheel in the house,
Mm-hmm.
and the front fireplace actually has the original cooking crane that enabled the pots to swing in and out of the fire so you could get your stew out when it was finished.
I think overall it's just helpful to remember what farm life was like, and we've tried to portray that today. I think it puts it a little into context because yesterday evening with my 10-year-old, I just asked him to help me plant 3 black raspberry bushes, and you would have thought I was pulling his teeth out. And I am the old guy saying, I had a huge garden in the backyard and our job was to weed that with my parents. But
you walked up the hill to school,
Right,
front and back
right.
in the snow.
But-
Yeah.
but it truly was a lot of work. And I think this adds a lot of context from what you both have said just about how the Wilder Swaim fit into that farming hub. It also helps explain why that 1840 edition in the rock basement would have been a big deal. More space, more storage, and more functionality for a growing family and a working farm.
Yeah, basements were important for cool storage and for keeping supplies. Modern refrigeration simply wasn't available. But if you do visit the house and you go downstairs, make sure to duck because
Yes.
it's very low down there. And you do, at the moment you go down the steps, you feel how cool it is. The house itself is in really good shape compared to many of the other early houses, even that exist here in Montgomery. Its condition actually helped it be listed on the National Register of Historic Places in 1981. And today, the house contains artifacts and research that are interesting for people to see. And so it is open occasionally so that you can come in. And the Harvest Moon Festival that I mentioned before is one of the times that we have most of our visitors because people are already in the park. And so they come over to give us a visit.
That's great, Janet. So let's talk a little bit about William Swaim. He was the Montgomery school principal and purchased that property back in 1917. He's credited with adding the shed addition on the back of the house and indoor plumbing, which would have been huge. He also started calling the property Swaim Fields, although the family actually lived on Montgomery Road across from Universalist Church.
That's right. And his daughter, Harriet, actually organized the first historical society to restore the Universalist Church. His other daughter, Bertha, married Delbert Todd, and they went on to turn Swaim into a golf course in 1933. I understand you're going to talk about that in another episode coming up. But in 1976, the golf course was developed into the Swaim Park subdivision, where I actually live. And the city took over the house and the 13 acres of the property for Swaim Park.
It's important to note, I think, that the property is near today's Heritage District. And with it being located in the city-owned park and being used by MHPA, it's helped to preserve an important part of the city's history. Janet, I know you've talked about this a lot already, but you spent so much time there. Do you have a favorite part of the house?
My favorite part of the house is really the original downstairs part with its farmhouse table where meals were prepared and consumed and virtually everything was done. The table was a very important part of the house. I'm also always fascinated by what's upstairs with years and years of people saving things, plaques from the old post office, pictures where stories were told and are yet to be told. Because each thing that's up there, somebody put it there for a reason, and there was a story behind it. We don't know all those stories, but I'm happy that we have we had an organization, and now we have the city stepping in to keep saving those stories.
That's great. Janet, thank you so much for taking the time to talk about MHPA and the Wilder Swaim House with us today. We really are truly grateful for everything that you've done and MHPA has done for this community. I know we just touched on a few things, but the impact of your effort in MHPA will be felt forever. Is there anything else you want to talk about in terms of MHPA or the house or your favorite part of history in Montgomery?
Thanks for having me. And I really would like to thank the city for stepping into the role of being the caretakers of the house. I think it's hard to recognize that there was a point in time where people wanted to tear it down. There was actually a vote in town about, like, should we keep it or should we tear it down? Do we want to spend the money? And it was determined that, yes, we would keep it. But there's always the danger when you look at, like I said, I live in Swaim, and the houses in the neighborhood, we're constantly making them bigger and bigger. And it's like, oh, this little house on the corner, can we really afford to keep that? Like, think about the size house that could go on that lot. But the city is committed to keeping those historic properties. And you guys have been working hard now at doing our previous role of saving those stories that are in the house. So I appreciate that very much. And there are other people in town that appreciate it too, whether they know it or not.
Well, thank you, Janet. We appreciate your kindness. Preservation connects people and places. And when you walk through the Wilder Swaim House, you experience Montgomery as generations did before you. As Janet mentioned, we do periodically host open houses. So you'll want to keep an eye out on the city's website and the bulletin. May is Historic Preservation Month. So we'll have 2 open houses happening in May, along with 2 public historic walking tours of downtown Montgomery, if you are interested in that. Again, keep an eye on social media, the bulletin, and our website. And then, as Janet mentioned, the house is always open on Harvest Moon, which is a fun time to come out. The kids really get excited about seeing the house. And we enjoy having people walk through it during Harvest Moon in October.
Again, thank you, Janet. And I think we just want to remind anyone that's out there listening, if you have any stories or artifacts that you'd like to share, please reach out to us at memories@montgomeryohio.gov.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Until next time, keep celebrating history.